What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bucky Brooks Show. I am your host, Bucky Brooks, and this is a show that covers all things football. We focus primarily on the NFL, but as we get closer to the draft, we'll shift our focus and talk about things that are related to the college game and how they eventually impact the pro game when it comes to players and prospects and those things. But today, we're going to have a nice little show because we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We could talk about Lamar Jackson and how the Steelers have been his boogeyman. We're talking about Michael Penix taking over in Atlanta, the great job that Jeff Hafley is doing with the Green Bay Packers defense. We're talking about the dilemma that the San Francisco 49ers have and Brock Purdy. And then we can't go without having some picks to college football playoff. But before we get to that, let's pay off our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And guys, this week, the game starts a little early for us when it comes to the NFL weekend. We got some Saturday football, and the marquee Saturday game will be the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to the Baltimore Ravens to take them on in a critical, pivotal AFC North matchup. But before we even talk about the teams battling, to me, this is compelling because the Pittsburgh Steelers have been Lamar Jackson's kryptonite. He has been terrific in the league, two-time MVP, and you can make the case that maybe he should win an MVP this year based on his sensational season. 34 touchdowns, 34 touchdown passes, only 3 interceptions, passer rating of 120.7. Some of the best ball that we've seen from him, but yet there are a lot of us that are waiting to see, can he knock off his nemesis, the Pittsburgh Steelers? When you look at Lamar Jackson's career, he is 1-4 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and really has never played well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. When you look at the stats, he's never had a game with a passer rating over 80.7 against the Steelers. When you look at the tape, you wonder, why do the Steelers confound and confuse Lamar Jackson so much? I'll say this, Mike Tomlin, they have a plan when they deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Whenever they deal with a mobile quarterback, they're different than some teams that want to sit and wait. They force the issue because they bring pressure. They attack from every angle. They bring pressure. They force him to make quick decisions under duress, and he certainly hasn't responded well. And even though I'll say this, look, he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. He's been an MVP for a reason. He can hurt you as a rare find as a runner and thrower. But there's something about the attack mentality that the Pittsburgh Steelers have against him that really is problematic. Patrick Queen, who has been on the Ravens side and now on the Pittsburgh Steelers side, played a key role in the early game win that the Steelers had against the Ravens. And part of that is the collective speed and athleticism of the Steelers defense. Some of it is Terrell Austin being willing to really go after it when it comes to bringing 5 and 6 man pressures and forcing number 8 to get off his spot. And another part is just the mentality that the Steelers have when they deal with the Ravens. This is a team that has knocked off the Ravens 8 of the last 9 times that they faced off. So there's a confidence that they have when it comes to playing the Ravens. And even though some of those games may have been influenced by the Steelers, by the Ravens kind of resting guys, getting ready for the postseason and those things, to me, is still significant when you hold that kind of advantage over a team and that kind of advantage over the quarterback. When I look at the Baltimore Ravens, I can say that maybe they're more balanced this year in terms of what they have around Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry having 1,400 yards on the ground, the weapons that they have on the outside, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, the tight ends, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, all those weapons around them have certainly helped. But really it comes down to Lamar Jackson dealing with the defensive coordinator and a front that loves to get after him. Does Lamar Jackson have the patience to be able to take what they give him when they bring pressure? Can he hit the sight adjustment? Can he get the ball out of his hands? Is he willing to utilize his legs instead of standing in the pocket, maybe trying to prove a point as a passer? To me, all of this is on the table on Saturday, and that's why this game is compelling. How does Lamar Jackson stand up to the boogeyman? Can he handle what Mike Tomlin and those guys are going to bring at him? Because if he is, the Baltimore Ravens not only can get even in the division race, I think it might spark the campaign that is an MVP campaign that Lamar Jackson is having. So, needless to say, this is a huge game for Lamar Jackson. One, to quiet the narrative. Two, to put his team in a position to get back to the top of the AFC North. And three, maybe to make a case, a final case, to swipe the MVP award away from Josh Allen. We know this. When we come back on the next pod, we're going to have to talk about how Lamar Jackson responded, because the narrative is only going to grow if he can knock off the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get to 4 downs. And 4 downs is like my favorite segment because I love to bring 4 topics into the mix that have kind of been brewing around the scouting community. And the number one topic of the week has been Michael Penix taking over for Kirk Cousins down in Atlanta. Now, this is a move that many of us thought would take place because whenever you draft someone in the first round, particularly you draft a quarterback within the top 10, the expectation is that that quarterback is going to play. Normally, when you take a top 10 quarterback, that guy's going to be rushed onto the field. We don't have the patience to wait on them to develop. We can put him right out there and let the grass become his classroom when it comes to his quarterback development and learning. This is different because the Atlanta Falcons took a different route when it came to getting their quarterback. They decided to go and get Kirk Cousins. They paid him $160 million with 60 guaranteed on a deal that I don't know if anyone saw coming in the offseason. Kirk Cousins was coming off an Achilles injury. And so when you invest a 4-year, $160 million deal, I mean, you just don't think that, oh, this is a team that is also going to get a quarterback at the top of the draft. Well, the Falcons fell in love with Michael Penix on his workout at UW. They had talked about him throughout the process, but there was something magical and mystical about the way they performed in his workout that led this team to double down on the quarterback position. Now, I didn't take issue with it because we all talk about quarterback is the most important position in football. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. Well, if you operate under that premise, why wouldn't you double down and make sure that you have 2 good quarterbacks in the building? Here's where things kind of unravel for the Atlanta Falcons. The original blueprint or plan was to have Kirk Cousins be the quarterback this year, maybe next year, before you hand the ball to Michael Penix. Michael Penix will basically serve an apprenticeship, work behind a Pro Bowl quarterback, see how the Pro Bowl quarterback prepares, see how he plays, and see if he can take the baton from Kirk Cousins and lead this franchise in a smooth transition from one franchise quarterback to the other. It gets sideways because Kirk Cousins didn't hold up his end of the deal. Kirk Cousins didn't play at a level that was suitable enough to get this team into the postseason. It started out slow, and we expected a slow start. He was going to be rusty coming off the Achilles. He had a nice 5-game run where the Falcons went 4-1. He had a 13-3 touchdown to interception ratio, and it looked like he had turned the corner. But in the last 5 games, I mean, he has struggled and struggled mightily. 1 touchdown, 9 interceptions, 1 win, 4 losses. This is a team that is sitting at 7-7, and they hold the tiebreaker advantage over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They need to win, but when your quarterback is unable to throw on first downs, and get this, I don't know if you had an opportunity to see this game against the Raiders. The Falcons refused to throw on first down the entire first half. And then when they threw on first down in the second half, the first play was picked by Robert Spillane. So now you have a team that doesn't have any confidence in the quarterback. You have a team, not only like the coaches, but a team who looks at Michael Penix every day, and they raved about him in the offseason, raved about him in the preseason, to the point they didn't even show him in the preseason because they felt like he was that good and they wanted to keep him under wraps. You have a locker room full of guys who now are looking at Kirk Cousins sideways because they believe that the young quarterback is more talented and ready to play. Raheem Morris didn't have a choice. He had to make this move or he ran the risk of losing the locker room. Now you put Michael Penix in the game. How do we get him to play well? Well, when I think about it and I look at the personnel that they have, one, the trio of receivers that they have, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, we can say that they're underutilized based on the production. They don't have a receiver with 1,000 yards yet. Drake London is close. He has over 900. But, man, there's so much more that this offense can do when you look at their personnel. We talk about the three guys on the perimeter and how they can create problems. One with the size, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, both 6'4", 6'5". They can post up these guys down the field and win these 50-50 balls. Mooney is one of the best route runners that you'll see in the league, and we've seen him explode at times when given opportunities. The problem that you had is Kirk Cousins wouldn't get them the ball, or he couldn't get them the ball without turning it over. 16 interceptions, 12 fumbles. I mean, this guy is at the top of the charts in both categories when it comes to turning it over. Michael Penix gives them an opportunity to expand the playbook when it comes to the passing game, to push the ball down the field, to bring the deep ball back into the mix, and to help them become the explosive offense that many of us expected. But it's not just the passing game that will benefit from the young player, even though he is going to go through some growing pains. It's the running game. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algiers are two of the best running backs that you'll find. Robinson is over 1,000 yards. Algiers like over 500. You're talking about being able to combine for 1,600 for a team that can run the football, is one of the best at running the football, but they haven't been able to do it successfully because the passing game has not balanced it out. Well, now you bring in Michael Penix, who is a known deep ball thrower, who also is comfortable shotgun, under center, really good in play action. It allows offensive coordinator Zach Robinson to do some of the things that he learned from Sean McVay with the Rams. What are those things? Well, first thing that you will see more of is the stretch bootleg combination. Stretch run game is an outside run directed to the outside leg of the tackle. It forces the defense to run the perimeter to stop it when you run into wide zone scheme. The complement to that is the bootleg out the back door away from it. What that does is it allows the quarterback to use to hold the backside in from chasing the run down. It also sets up these exotic misdirection play action passes that lead to these huge plays on crossing routes or diagonals from your wide receivers who are typically operating under condensed sets. So now let's look at the Atlanta Falcon offense and envision it being very similar to what the Rams were doing. You have these big guys on the outside, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Darnell Mooney's not necessarily big, but he can condense splits. They can run these crossing routes, much like you saw the Rams do with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. This now becomes a big part of the Falcons offense. And when you throw those big guys being able to get into the run game, block, while also running crossing routes and things across the middle of the field to go with what we talked about in Robinson and Algiers, if you have a capable thrower, this offense becomes a headache for defensive coordinators. My hope is over the last 3 games, we see Michael Penix add something to that. It gives them a dimension that is not only exciting, but it's explosive. And it also makes the Atlanta Falcons relevant when it comes to their offense, being able to give people problems if they're able to make their way into the tournament. Yes, it's a risk in handing the ball to a player who's making his first career start against the Giants late in the season. But, man, the reward is there if he's able to play well and give this offense the pop that it needs to be a playoff contender. Now let's talk about the Green Bay Packers and what they're doing on defense. So much of the conversation with Green Bay has been all about the offense, all about what Matt LaFleur has done to ignite this offense. You got Jordan Love playing well. You got a young cast of playmakers and pass catchers that are going crazy. Josh Jacobs is near the top of the charts running the football. But the key to the Green Bay Packers' success has really been their defense and what new defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley has brought since coming over from Boston College. Now, remember, Hafley left his head coaching position with the Boston College Eagles to be the defensive coordinator for the Packers. But when he did that, he brought some of the know-how that he had from the college game and added it to the pro game. He has started to do some of the things that are very popular at the collegiate level. So if you watch college football, you hear announcers always talk about simulated pressures or creepers. You also hear them talk about hot blitzes, which are 6-man blitzes with 5 guys in coverage, 2 guys typically working underneath, 3 guys playing the deep thirds. And what they're doing is they're bringing more than the offense can block while reading the eyes of the quarterback and doing some of those things. Well, when you bring pressure, but you also bring simulated pressures where it looks like you're bringing guys from the second level, but you're only bringing 4 and you're dropping 7, you now are quickening the clock for the quarterback and really making life difficult for the play caller. What happens? turnovers, mistakes, negative plays, sacks, tackles for loss, interceptions, fumbles, big plays. The Green Bay Packers are living in that world. We've seen it. Look, Xavier McKinney was one of the top interception leaders early in the year because he was getting his hands on balls on these errant throws. He also is playing a critical role in what I call this diverse defense, where they're bringing people from all over, second level, third level. They're bringing people, but they're still maintaining the integrity of the coverage by having 7 defenders dropping back. So now you have basically quarterbacks playing whack-a-mole, trying to figure out who's coming, who's not coming. How do I read it? Do I read it pre-snap, post-snap? All of this going, and you have a bunch of athletic defenders that can fly and play versatile roles. That's the only way you can have 16 different defenders with at least a half sack on the year. Think about that. At a time when so many teams are relying on 1, 2, maybe 3 guys to generate the pass rush, the Green Bay Packers have 16 guys that have contributed to the pass rush. What that does is that now makes life tough for the quarterback and coordinator to figure out who are the guys that are live when it comes to rushing the passer. And when you balance that out with a nice pre-snap disguise, a willingness to vary how you attack the quarterback, you're talking about just being confused at the point of attack. And when you're confused, you refuse to hold on to the ball for an extended period of time. So now it comes to checkdowns. Now the defense is dictating to the offense, and they're eliminating the big plays. Well, if you eliminate the big plays in the pro game, it limits the scoring. And because of that, the Green Bay Packers now are 8th in scoring defense. They're holding people down. They're one of the top teams when it comes to turning the ball over. When you look at the things that really matter in defensive football, giving up points and takeaways. Because the Green Bay Packers are at the top of the charts in those categories, they're a legitimate team that can win the Super Bowl, even though they may not get the number 1 seed. So keep an eye on the Packers because of their defense, not because of their offense. Their defense is what makes them a very dangerous team when we think about the tournament. Now let's go to the West Coast and let's go to the Bay Area, because many of us watched last week the Thursday night football game, the San Francisco 49ers, the LA Rams, Devondre Campbell's, I would say, refusal to go in the game overshadowed what we saw. And what we saw were the San Francisco 49ers lose. They lost in inclement conditions, and the quarterback, Brock Purdy, didn't play well. And what that has done, not just that game, but his play this season, it has sparked a conversation about what will the 49ers do in the offseason now that Brock Purdy is eligible to get paid. He's coming off a year where, look, he's in the midst of a year where 65% completion rate. He has over 3,000 yards, but a 15-9 touchdown to interception ratio, and his passer rating is 94, which is right in the middle of the pack by whatever measurements. The problem is he has spoiled us for 2 years where he had a 17-4 record. You look at his numbers. He had 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions his first season, his rookie season as a starter. They were 5-0. He then had 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and a 113 passer rating his second year when he led this team to the Super Bowl. So in his first 2 seasons, he was 17-4. He led the team to the NFC Championship game, and then he brought him to a Super Bowl. Now, when it's time to pay him, we're looking at a team that is 6-7 under his watch, and he is playing different than he played those first 2 years because the supporting cast around him is not the same. Now, when we talk about the supporting cast, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, well, all of those guys have been impacted in some way, whether it's through injury, looking at CMC, looking at Brandon Ayuk, who have not been the same and not really been available, whether it's inconsistent play, which is Deebo, who hasn't been the same guy over the last couple of years and is probably a descending player at this stage of his career. George Kittle continues to be great. He's outstanding. One of the top tight ends, remains that, but he also is an older tight end. Then when it goes to the offensive line that has certainly protected him, Trent Williams has dealt with some off-the-field things related to his family, injuries. He's older. Offensive line has not protected him the same. And you have a frustrated play caller in Kyle Shanahan, who's seeing this dynamic offense that he ran for 2 years with Brock Purdy basically as his joystick. Now it's not performing up to par. So the outrage in 49er land is we can't pay Brock Purdy because if we pay Brock Purdy, we're not going to be able to pay the weapons around him, and he's not good enough to carry the team. I get that. I hear all of that. I've even floated the suggestion that maybe they take Sam Darnold over that. But here's what I'm thinking about after really taking some time to look at the situation. Brock Purdy has to get paid, and he has to get paid at the market rate. The market rate for a starting quarterback who has some pelts on the wall is going to be $50 million. And we may not like it because $50 million is a crazy number for a quarterback who may not be a guy who can carry the team. But if I'm Brock Purdy and his team, I can't go below $50 million because I'm looking at the guys that are commanding $50 million. Trevor Lawrence is on that list. Jordan Love is on that list. Tua Tagovailoa is on that list. If I'm Brock Purdy and his representation, I can't take $1 less than what those guys make because I'm a more accomplished player than those guys. I've won more than Trevor Lawrence. I played longer, and we could talk about me and Jordan Love and whatever, but I've been consistent. And as consistent as I've been, I'm right there with him. So that puts us in the same range. With Tua Tagovailoa, you have the injury concerns in history, and we could talk about his size and his whip arm as a lefty. But for Brock Purdy, I can say, look at what I've done, so I'm worthy of being paid like that. And let's be real. He's right. They won a lot of games with Brock Purdy under center. And we can talk about, but you can get anybody to play the position. Let's look at how good it is, the supporting cast. But we've seen that before. We saw what this offense looked like with Jimmy Garoppolo. We saw what the offense looked like with Trey Lance. We've seen this offense operate with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard and others who've had opportunities to start. Doesn't look the same. So whether you like it or not, Brock Purdy has to get paid. And if you're Brock Purdy, there's no way you're signing for anything less than what the competition is getting in Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, and Tua Tagovailoa. So I'm here to tell you that when Brock Purdy goes to the club, the $50 million club, the doorman's going to step aside and he's going to let him through the velvet ropes because Brock Purdy deserves to be a $50 million quarterback. Now let's talk about the college football playoff because I'm excited about this. I'm excited because they finally opened it up. They put 12 teams in, so we get to see more football. We get to see different teams playing for an opportunity to go win a national title. And when I look at this, I think it's great. We can talk about the seeding and who got left out and who's unworthy and should Alabama be in. Doesn't matter. The playoff field is set. We have 4 games over the course of the weekend that will serve as appetizers for what we will see when we get to the quarterfinals. And the games that are on the docket, Indiana playing Purdue, you got SMU playing Penn State, Tennessee taking on Ohio State, and then Clemson and Texas. The game that is taking place on Friday, Indiana versus Notre Dame, super compelling because styles make fights. Indiana's high-powered offense, I would say they're very confident, almost cocky coach in Kirk Cousins. He is going to have this offense humming. The problem is Notre Dame is better when it comes to the personnel. And even though this has been a game where many people have predicted an upset, I believe the upset loss to Northern Illinois sets the table and is the foundation for Notre Dame to take care of Indiana. It might be tight for a half, it may be tight for 3/4, but at some point, the bigger, more physical team will take over. Notre Dame knocks off Indiana and they move on to the quarterfinal. SMU and Penn State. This is funny because SMU was a team that many people did not want in the tournament. They didn't have a notable win by the outsiders. People looked at it and said, well, they haven't beat a top 25 team or whatever you want to say about SMU. What I will say is I saw this team play in the ACC championship game, and look, they messed around the first half. They were not the same team. They turned it over. They didn't look good. Second half, they caught fire. They can give you problems with their offense because they can spread it out. They have really good athletes on the perimeter, and they can go. The issue that they have is they're playing a very talented Penn State team. And there are people that take shots at James Franklin saying he's not a great X and O's coach. He's not a tactician or a strategist. But what he is a great recruiter. And sometimes the Jimmies and Joes matter way more than the X's and O's. Because of that, I got Penn State in this matchup. Too talented, too big, too fast. At some point, that wins, and that's going to win in the playoffs. And that's why Penn State will advance to the next round. Tennessee, Ohio State. This is a tough one. And it's a tough one because Ohio State has been reeling because they've had to deal with the fallout of losing the big game. People are talking about Ryan Day is coaching for his job. He has to win this and has to make a deep postseason run to stay on at Ohio State. And what's crazy about that is he's only lost one game in the Big Ten. He's a really good coach. They typically play well. And it reminds me of when this team went into the tournament and they had to deal with C.J. Stroud taking on Georgia after they lost to Michigan. They had Georgia dead to rights and just couldn't finish the game. The problem is I worry about their defense dealing with a very unique offense in Tennessee. Tennessee is running a variation of the old Art Browse Baylor offense where they spread you out from C to C, put their guys way outside the numbers, both of their wideouts, and they basically force you to defend the run with a light box while also being exposed to man on the perimeter. The problem with that is this game in the playoffs are normally decided by quarterback play. And I can say that I confidently believe that Will Howard is going to outplay his counterpart in this game. And so even though everything that we've been taught all year is that Ohio State is the most talented team in college football, I feel like they're one and done. I'm going to go with Tennessee in this one. Last game, Clemson, Texas. Dabo Swinney deserves a lot of credit for getting Clemson into the tournament. This is a team that really didn't look like they were going to make their way into the postseason. They lose at the end of the year to South Carolina. They had a couple other losses that you're like, man, I just don't know how good they are. But here they are in the tournament against a Texas team that has to carry the burden of being the favorite. A Texas team that also may not have the most confidence in their quarterback, Quinn Ewers, even though many projected him to be a first-round pick. The pressure is all on Texas in this game. And it's on them because I don't know if Steve Sarkisian can call the game around the quarterback and if he can do it against a team that has a championship pedigree because their coach has been to a ton of these games and played in this environment. While the players may have that experience, Dabo certainly knows how to get his team ready. What I would say is this when it comes to Texas. Texas wins. Texas wins because Steve Sarkisian has the quarterback Quinn Ewers on a short leash. And in this game, he may do what Nick Saban did to Jalen Hurts when he was at Alabama, and they pulled Jalen Hurts and gave the ball to Tua Tagovailoa. Do not be surprised if Quinn Ewers sits down, Arch Manning goes in, and Arch Manning is the hero that helps Bevo and the Longhorns go on to the quarterfinals. So there are my picks. Give me Notre Dame, give me Penn State, give me Tennessee, and give me Texas. Those are the four teams that advance. We'll see if we can talk about it on Monday when we have the next podcast. So that's the podcast, The Bucky Brooks Show. Great discussing some of the great things that are going on in the NFL and college football. Let's circle back on Monday and see how it all played out. Until then, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'll talk to you soon.